It is a big real estate site, and the United States is going to own it and will slowly, very slowly, we're in no rush, develop it. We're going to bring stability to the Middle East. We'll be building through other of the very rich countries in the Middle East. They'll be building some beautiful sites for the people, for the Palestinians to live in. They'll be living in harmony and peace probably for the first time in hundreds of years.
Edward Ahmed Mitchell is the National Deputy Executive Director of the Council on American-Islamic Relations. He joins me live from Atlanta, Georgia. Great to have you here with us on TRT World. So what do you make of Donald Trump doubling down on his comments of owning Gaza?
Well, to be frank, I'm not that concerned about President Trump's idea becoming a reality. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, all the countries whose cooperation you would need to ethnically cleanse Gaza, Palestinians have said this is a non-starter. And even the president has started to walk back his original idea, which was to militarily occupy Gaza and move all the Palestinians out. So I think this is a fantasy. I don't think there's any practical way this could happen without setting off a massive regional war. I think the main concern right now is that Mr. Netanyahu clearly does not want the ceasefire to go all the way to the end. He's looking for an opportunity to restart the war. And President Trump has not shown at this point any willingness to stop Netanyahu from doing such things if he decides to go that far. So the main question right now is, will the ceasefire get all the way through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3? And will everyone come together to find a reasonable resolution to the fate of Gaza? And that resolution should be the establishment of a Palestinian state, including a liberated and reconstructed Gaza for the Palestinian people.
Right. And Edward, as you know, that the U.S. has up until a few days ago remained a supporter of a two-state solution, at least in theory. But after Donald Trump's press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu, it seems to me U.S.'s policy towards Israel and Palestine has completely changed. So can we now say that the two-state solution is officially dead, with the U.S. completely pulling out of that idea?
Well, a few things to note. Number one, no president in decades has made any real strides towards making a two-state solution a reality. President Biden paid lip service to it, but was not willing to use American power to force a two-state solution into existence. Everyone who is familiar with Netanyahu knows that he has spent his career opposing a Palestinian state. And so for numerous presidents, including President Biden, to pretend that this was somehow feasible, it's ridiculous. President Trump is just saying out loud what the reality is, which is that the Israelis have no intention of willingly allowing a Palestinian state to come into existence. Now, of course, the problem with President Trump is his idea is just as much of a fantasy. It's not going to work. If the United States, if President Trump truly wants peace, he would use American power and force Netanyahu to accept a two-state solution. But if he's not willing to do that, it leaves all sorts of other alternatives that no one is going to be happy with and that usually are going to lead to conflict. So President Trump, again, if this is his grand idea, this is all he's got, it's not going to end well.
Right. And Edward, I just want to talk about Donald Trump's idea of, owning the Gaza Strip. He keeps doubling down on this idea. And, correct me if I'm wrong, in order to buy something, the owner should be willing to sell it. In the case of Palestine, the Palestinians have made it abundantly clear that Gaza is not for sale. Hands off Gaza, but he keeps doubling down on that idea. So again, how is he going to do that? Is it going to be through ethnic cleansing, forceful expulsion, or, like you said, is it just another imperialist fantasy?
Well, look, colonialism doesn't require the native population to sell the land. Colonialism just requires stealing the land. But again, I think President Trump has a habit of just saying whatever is on his mind. And when he's making these comments, it's usually being prompted by questions from reporters who ask him about this, and then he just starts extrapolating. And so I honestly do not think that the people around President Trump think this is a realistic idea. The people of Palestine are not going to sell Gaza to the United States. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan are not going to go along with it. And without their cooperation, this is just not going to happen. Even if the United States and Israel wanted to do this, they would have to essentially force an invasion into Egypt to make Palestinians leave Gaza. And they're not going to do that. So I think that reality is going to have to settle in soon. If the president wants to make progress towards a real peace. And if he doesn't, then by the end of his term, we're going to be in the same situation of revolving conflict, Palestinians not being free, the Israeli government not being able to keep its people safe. if we want peace and justice for everyone, there has to be freedom for the Palestinian people. Everything else is a fantasy.
Right. Edward, you mentioned Egypt and Jordan. I understand Donald Trump has been calling on Egypt and Jordan to take in Palestinians after forcefully, forcing them out of Gaza and other Palestinian territories. And this is something, this is an idea that both Egypt and Jordan have outright rejected. But considering that there is this ongoing pressure on these two countries from Donald Trump, do you think this pressure can force them to change their stance?
Look, Egypt and Jordan have not been exactly known for firmly standing up to the Israeli government, but even they have red lines. Even they understand that admitting millions of Palestinians to their land would result in those Palestinians never going back to Palestine. It might spark a revolt among Jordanians and Egyptians opposed to the plan. And of course, it would be destabilizing the broader region. So I think the Egyptian government and the Jordanian government for this is a red line. I think the peace treaty would be chopped up. I do not think they would allow this to happen or go along with it. And I certainly don't think they'd allow it to be forcibly happen. So unless the United States and Israel are willing to go to war with every surrounding Arab and Muslim country, which I don't think they're going to do, this is a fantasy. It's not a realistic proposal. And President Trump has got to get serious soon. He does seem to show more humanity, to be frank, even in his very strange way, than President Biden did. But he's got to appeal to his better angels and turn his opposition to mass killing into a serious proposal to secure peace for Palestinians. Otherwise, he is not going to secure any sort of grand deal by the end of his term.
Fascinating insights. Edward, Ahmed, Michelle, thanks very much for joining us here on TRT World. I really appreciate your taking out the time.